Today we're talking about one of the slightly less pleasant trends from the newer Games Workshop, the phenomenon of no model, no rules. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics for a more discussion-related video, where I'll just be sharing a few thoughts on Games Workshop's no model, no rules policy. We'll talk about what it is, a few of the many ways that it seems to manifest in Games Workshop's releases, focusing particularly on these new squad weapon loadout changes in the 9th codexes, a quick touch on Legends, and my overall take on the subject. So this of course isn't the sort of thing that Games Workshop would ever advertise that they're doing, and to be honest, as policies go, it does seem to be a relatively recent one from Games Workshop, and they didn't used to be anywhere near as strict with it in the past. Basically, with their new releases, their rules tend to be, if we don't sell a model of it, then generally don't expect it to be supported in the game rules or promoted on any of our media sites. Now, I certainly understand why Games Workshop do this. They're certainly a business and have models to sell and shareholders to please, so in general it's going to be the sensible business decision to try and focus on promoting your own things, and wherever possible cut out things that don't directly help them. I certainly wouldn't really criticise Games Workshop for going down the policy, but it does pose a few issues for us as hobbyists on a couple of key areas. Firstly, they tended to be a lot more lax with this in the past. In older issues of their White Dwarf magazine, for example, you might see people running almost entirely proxy armies, and promoting things like conversions and kit bashes far more frequently, and really talking that up as part of the core hobby experience. If they are a bit more freeform with the rules, it certainly helps encourage that aspect of the hobby, even though I'm sure it doesn't translate quite as well into direct sales as just talking up the individual miniature kits that they release. In the game rules as well, they did have quite a lot of support for units, models and armies that used to be things that you could use right in the heart of the game, and as things get updated and they focus on their own miniatures, those things fall by the wayside, and it means that some people can't use things that they've invested loads of time and effort building up, or just lose cool fun options within their codex, and that's generally going to rankle a bit to have things taken away. Here perhaps are a few of some of the biggest casualties of the whole no model, no rules thing, though I'm sure that there are absolutely hundreds more. If you can think of anything else that's a particular issue, then please let us know down in the comments. I'd say if there's ever a single unit that really exemplifies the whole issue, then it's the Orc Looted Wagon. Basically, as long as Orcs have existed, in the lore they're well known to repurpose Imperial and Xenos tech, weld a whole load of Orc glyphs onto the side of it, maybe mount some bigger and boomier guns, and then drive it madly at the enemy firing away. Looted wagons in previous Orc codexes were really quite a fun option. I remember they had a fun don't press stat rule, where the Orcs misunderstand the technology, and they accidentally send the tank zooming straight towards their enemy rather than firing any weapons that turn. Maybe the most iconic example will be the Looted Leman Russ, like this excellent example here from the Warhammer 40k wiki, which you would need a Games Workshop kit at the heart of it, but because they haven't made any official model of it, it's been left out of the last couple of Orc codexes. I believe that its rules resurface once every so often, maybe in a slightly lackluster form for narrative play only, and it just seems such a shame to have such a truly iconic Orc unit fall by the wayside like this. If you did have Looted Leman Russes, I'm sure you could use them as a gun wagon or the Forge World cannon wagon rules, so it really isn't the end of the world for Orc players with fun conversions, but I'm sure it would be very high on the wish list for Orc players to have true Looted Wagon rules come back, but it's just not that likely to happen because of the no model, no rules policy. Another very hefty list of casualties are all the special characters that appeared in previous codexes and then got dropped somewhere along the way. Again, I'm sure I'm going to be missing absolutely tons of examples here, but these are some of the ones that I remember myself. Captains Alraham and Chenkov for the Imperial Guard, the Space Marine Sergeant Baston, the Doom of Malantai, the Tyrannid Psycho Beast, the Parasite of Mortrex, the one that could create Ripper Swarms, and an absolutely massive host of characters for the Drukhari. They had their special character roster massively extended in one of their previous codexes, and all of them casually done away with in the next one. They just never got round to making any official models for Vect, Lady Malice, Baron Sarthonyx, Duke Slissus or Karadurak, so they were gone almost as quickly as they appeared. There's also the Spirit Seer character from Iandin, an old Zogwart who could turn people into squigs, which I guess we've kind of seen as Zogwart-inspired character come back in that new Orc Warboy. I guess I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see some of these guys reappear in ages in the future. Games Workshop does like to draw on their past examples for ideas to release new kits. Still though, it's a big flavour loss for these armies, the Drukhari in particular, to have all these fun and flavourful additions to the battlefield axed. There were plenty of character models that never got models, but also several units and entire armies went out of print as well. The archetypical example being the squats, the space dwarves that were dropped and they said that they got eaten by the Tyranids. Pretty much everything that went to Warhammer Legends, such as the Imperial Guard Rough Riders, or various Forge World things such as the Griffin. Both of those were particularly relevant examples to me, as I own tons of the things. And everything else that went to Warhammer Legends, including things like Space Marine characters on bikes, and some other entire Forge World armies such as Elysians, or the big expanded Kroot range. While we're at it, I thought we might just talk about Warhammer Legends, before we talk about some of the new trends in squad weapon options that have changed in the 9th codexes. And I would say that while Warhammer Legends maybe is bad news for any individual model or unit that goes into it, as it means they're not going to have ongoing support going forwards, I think this was an example of at least a fairly generous move by Games Workshop, making a small amount more effort for models they don't sell to remain playable, when they could have just done the lazy alternative, which would just not include them in the next codex, and basically leave things like, say, Space Marine Librarians on bikes or Imperial Guard Rough Riders entirely unplayable in the new edition. I'm sure most of you will have been familiar with Warhammer Legends at the moment, but you can reach their PDF document on the Warhammer community site, where a bunch of models get a final datasheet, points value, and then no further updates from then on, and Games Workshop don't recommend their use for any sort of competitive play. I think they say that you should ask your opponent's permission before you use Legends models, which would usually be fine. In a more casual game they could add some fun and fluffy options, but seeing as they're not updated, I wouldn't be trying to use them in any sort of gamey way to exploit things to the maximum. Any clever combos you come up with Legends units maybe doesn't really show that you're achieving very much, as it just means that you're kind of exploiting things that weren't really designed for the current codex of the faction. I'd still say that having models go to Warhammer Legends is generally going to be a bad thing for them. If they're no longer part of the current codex, it means they won't see the same sort of support, and they might drop off and have no rules eventually. But it's still far better than them not bothering whatsoever. So for more casual games you can still put your miniatures on the table, and have some sort of official guidance for how to use them in game. Next, I'd just like to mention one of the most recent examples of no model, no rules manifesting, which are some of the slightly bizarre changes to datasheets that we've seen, particularly in the new Death Guard and Admech codexes, are some of the biggest examples. Generally, the norm has been in the past for squads to be able to take certain special weapons. Say if you have a unit of 5 of them, they can take 1 special weapon from this list, and if you have 10 of them, then they can take 2 from that list. For a lot of units, Games Workshop does seem to be doing away with that now, such as was apparent from the recent Plague Marine datasheet, which a lot of people found a little bit annoying and restrictive, as it very closely followed only exactly what you could build from the box and nothing more. Before, it used to be quite a lot more freeform and also a bit more neat, but now almost every special or melee weapon is individual, meaning that say in a 5-man squad you could take 1 flail, 1 cleaver, 1 axe and 1 dual knife Plague Marine, but you can't say take multiple flails. The same is kind of true for the Skitarii. Previously, you could have 5-man units, each bearing multiple special weapons, say a 5-man squad with 2 arc rifles in it, or a 10-man squad with 3. Now, because the kit only contains 1 of each special weapon, you can now only have 1 of each in a 10-model unit. It means that you can't have a unit spamming arc rifles, but you could have a very weird combination of 1 arc rifle, 1 plasma caliber, and 1 transuranic arquebus. Now, I've certainly seen a few people getting annoyed at these restrictions online, but I think it does have a few positives as well. I guess the main issue for anyone who's built and assembled those units before is that they might have acquired or converted bits to allow them to field them in those special loadouts that they could previously. Say a Plague Marine unit with a couple of flails of corruption, or say a unit of Skitarii equipped with multiple arc rifles. It is annoying if you had a legal squad loadout and now you don't, just because Games Workshop are wanting to reflect the exact kit that you can buy. It is also a bit annoying on the wording for the datasheet. Before they tended to be a bit more simple. Now they have to have a serious amount of bullet points for which weapons you can and can't take, and perhaps equipping a Plague Marine squad is even less intuitive than it was before. However, I do think it does have some positives going forward, in that it does address the issue of people not quite having enough bits to make a functioning unit. Say if you did want your 10-man Skitarii squad firing 3 arc rifles, as only 1 comes in the kit, if you wanted to buy them direct from Games Workshop, you'd have to buy 3 different Skitarii boxes and use the arc rifles from each of them. Ridiculously inefficient, and it meant that certain bits were just incredibly valuable. I remember when I bought a box of Skitarii when they came out, and sold a couple of bits online that I didn't want, I think that someone paid something crazy like £8 or £9 for the plasma caliber. At least having the squad loadout reflect what comes in the box does mean that that's not an issue, and it might not be such a bad thing for newer players going forward, as it means that they can build the full option of squad loadouts from the box that they get. So I think there's benefits and trade-offs to this. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say though. So overall, my take on no model, no rules is that what Games Workshop does is kind of understandable. They are a company and they do need to promote their own things. However, I do think it's one of the aspects of their business that can take away from the hobby a little bit, and it isn't really the most fun thing for the player if Games Workshop rigidly limits themselves to only the things that they sell. From a maximal profit business perspective, I'm sure Games Workshop would happily see us playing with nothing but monopose miniatures, and do away with conversions and kit bashes entirely. I feel like it might be the sort of thing that is good for the health of the game though as a whole. More wacky fun rules, encouraging conversions, and being a bit laxer on some of the popular edge case scenarios might do them a little bit of good in terms of drawing more people to the hobby, which might not be too bad for Games Workshop in the long run either. Generally though, from an individual level, I'd be at least somewhat wary of heavily investing in models that you need to kit bash. If Games Workshop doesn't directly sell it in a box, you do at least expose yourself at some risk to it going out of date somewhere down the line. I've been at least slightly burned with this myself, having 4 Griffins and 30 Rough Riders. They still have Legends rules, and I can run them as other things, but it's certainly not a help to fielding them on the table in any sort of regularity. For 9th edition releases, I might be a little bit wary of things such as special weapon excesses in core units, things like the Scutari or the Plague Marines, where they might have special weapon spam taken away a bit, converting any out-of-production models that Games Workshop still releases rules for, and perhaps some of the lesser known or less popular Forge World kits, where, as we know, Forge World have been streamlining a bit, some things go out of production never to return. I think there's no exact science of knowing what will be supported into the future and what won't, but in general, newer models and particularly plastic kits are very unlikely to go anywhere anytime soon. So I hope you've enjoyed a bit of discussion around the topic. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. How much impact has the no model no rules thing had on your armies, and is there anything that you'd most like to see return? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the 40k discussion videos coming regularly, with new content coming out pretty much every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, I'd just like to mention that Auspex Tactics has a Patreon page, which you can find down in the video description. Making all the content does take a fair amount of time, and if you are enjoying regularly, then any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, such as seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next for the channel, and automatic entry to the monthly prize giveaways, with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.